don't worry about it. Just work with the data you have. Because data is never going to be perfect. If you spend
Yeah.
your time working on data, you're losing focus on the customer and how you're engaging. So take the data you have, understand the challenges with it, but still, you know, understand how you can bring value to what you have, and then refine, rethink, refine, revise, and get better all the time. This is a pure play startup in a they're a Fortune 500 company. They're one of my pinnacles of what they're doing right. I'm like, oh, and you didn't have the data right. So no, but start somewhere and then refine, 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 get better all the time. So it's a journey.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Heath Gascoigne, and I am the host of the Business Transformation Podcast. And this is the show for business transformators who are part business strategists, part business designers, part collaborators, and part negotiators. Business transformators have moved past just business design and includes oversight of implementation of those business designs and business transformation, and includes stakeholder management, coordination, and negotiation. If you work in strategy development and implementation and work to ensure that the strategy is aligned to the business design and technology, then you're probably a business transformator. This is the show where we speak to industry experts and professionals to share their strategies, stories, and insights to help you start, turn around, and scale your business transformation. Welcome to the Business Transformation Podcast. And in this episode, we're talking to one of those industry experts. We are talking to Jason McLaughlin. I got that right, Jason?
Jason
McLaurin.
McLaurin, close McLaurin.
McLaurin. Okay. That's the Kiwi accent. Forgive me. Okay. Who is a CRO, Chief Revenue Officer at the Sheridan Group, Customer Experience VP at Cisco for 25 years, good tenure, and Product and Services VP and Satellite Technologies prior to that. So quite familiar with disruption and transformation. Jason, welcome. How are you?
Hey Keith, great. Thanks for inviting me, and great to be here.
My pleasure. So for context, ladies and gentlemen, Jason is in America, in a place I quite like, actually, in Colorado, where I spend a little bit of time snowboarding. So we're on different sides of the world, not that far apart, only about 9 hours, depending how fast your plane is. I've got a headwind or tailwind in different continents. So what we will talk about here is related to business transformation. In this case, with Jason's background and experience around customer service as customer experience. It's not to say that this is only biased to America or this is only in the UK. We're talking industry agnostic. Okay, so welcome, Jason. As we usually cover off on the podcast here, we talk about the three main points of, from your perspective in industry, customer experience, what has the industry got right? What are they doing well? What are they not doing right? As in the transformation, there's this constant thing of 70% failure rate, and they don't seem to be learning or getting better, but continually doing the same repeated mistakes. So in customer experience, what is it that they're doing well or not doing right, or what they can improve? Mm-hmm. And in terms of your role and your value add that you bring to your clients, is there a particular process you follow? What is that process? Could you step us through it? And number three is if you could do it all again, having your many, many years of experience there, what would you do differently, if anything at all? Okay.
All right.
Kick us off.
Okay. Yeah, corral that. Well, great. Thanks again. And you mentioned that this podcast is global. So I have been based outside the US for most of my career. So in Europe and a lot of time in Asia Pac. So we can take a very global perspective with this discussion.
Fantastic.
And great. And I think what the industry's got right is I love the focus on customer success. I love that people are thinking about this, have CCOs in their team or CROs in their team who wake up and say, "This is my job. I'm going to bring this focus to the company." I love that focus. I love the focus on customer value and thinking about how I make sure the customer is getting value of the products and services that I sold them. Right? No longer just I sell them something and flick it over the fence and walk away. I want to make sure that they get value out of this because I want them to come back and renew their subscription. So I love that focus. I also appreciate that it brings focus inside the company, that it's not just a CCO who has that view. It's also the product teams who say, I need to build products that bring value to customers. It's not just build products myself, but products for customers. So that philosophy is extending within customers, but also within the enterprise, within the vendors themselves. So I love that focus. Where I think we're challenged, though, is the execution and ideas and philosophy and direction is one thing. the execution
Oh,
is
yes.
challenging. And this is where I've got two very different experiences. One with a very large company, and you mentioned Cisco, and
Mm-hmm.
now with my 3D group is I'm consulting with small companies from
Uh-huh.
5 to 10 to 20 people, and they're starting their journey. So I've got experience in the very big and the very small,
Yep.
and in both cases, the execution is a challenge. But
Uh-huh.
that's the start. I can go into more detail where I think execution, but
Yep.
any thoughts to that, Heath?
No, no, I think what you're touching on there, and what's interesting is that you were talking about from different parts of the business, from product to customer service to customer, and what you're saying is the dependencies between different parts of the business. And I think with business transformation is, and coming to your execution part, is that there is one thing about a small team that might get together to come up with the plan and strategy, but it's execution. But it's not just the immediate core people in a small team. It impacts the entire organization. I'll say that business transformation is everyone's business. And so like this here is what you're saying is product development and customer service, customer experience is everyone's business.
I think it's well said. And this is where the execution is challenged. Whether you're a 20-person company or a 200,000-person company, you
Mm,
still need product teams, sales teams, and customer success teams who are working in a line and doing the same motion with the customers. And that's where the execution breaks down.
mm,
And I think to me, it starts with culture, as if the culture has got to be pervasive and say, this is important to the company. We are a customer service, customer success, and value focused company. And that
mhm.
can't be just the job of the CCO or the CRO. It's got to be the job of everyone in the company to say, yes, I'm going to make this work. If that culture is not pervasive, then the rest of the execution will be challenged around getting data, getting products, et cetera. But those are the details I can get into. But that's the first thing to me is culture.
Culture. Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
I like that, and I have something similar. Is that this transformation and the how that businesses or business transformations fail? It's not a structural or a technology or a framework thing. It's a people thing. It's a psychology thing, and part of that comes with culture. Is it
Yeah.
understanding? You know, that saying about strategy and culture eats strategy for business for breakfast.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it does. You can have the best strategy, but if your people aren't brought into it, the psychology, then goodbye.
Yeah. And that's exactly right, Heath. So for me, once you get the culture, and that's not a 6 month journey, that's a 5, 10 year journey for some of these companies. So how do you get
Yeah,
that culture? And the small companies may have an easier start because there are 5, 10 people. And when
yeah,
you have 50, 80,000 people, that's a big ship to turn. So
yes.
culture is one. Next for me is really the tools and process. And
Hmm.
again, this varies from big company to small company, but big company, they've got legacy tools, processes, and structure. And it's been really amazing and sometimes saddening to me how much they can struggle to bring legacy processes and data up to standard and say, how I don't know
Yeah,
what my customer is doing. I'm a big, successful, multi-billion-dollar company. I don't know how they use my software. And until you can tell that, you can't make sure they're getting value.
yeah, yeah. That I've seen that too. I'm actually helping a client right now, and a big multinational, and it's like you got to do the simple things right, and let's not get carried away and get caught up in the like. I always say that it's not so much the frameworks or the, as you're saying, the tools or processes or structure. It is, I would say it's the skill of the business transformator leading that change. And part of that is understanding where the business is, speaking their language, understanding like with classic almost presentation style. Know your audience, speak to them in a language that they understand. And then why is that important? Well, there's two ways you can do it. You can tell them how to change, or you can take them on the change.
Mhm.
One is going to last longer, and one other one's going to be as soon as you walk out the door, then go back to culture the way it was before.
Correct. 100%. 100%. I'm talking to my current role. I'm talking to a small company. There are about 20 people.
Hmm.
And one of the questions they're asking me is, when do I start this journey? Like, we've got a few customers under our belt. We're selling
Yeah.
hardware, some software, but mostly a hardware company with some recurring revenue. And I need you, but I don't need you, right? I need a CCO. When do I start
Yeah.
this journey? I'm like, yesterday. I mean, start
Yeah.
yesterday. If not, then start today. And at least get the culture right, get the tools and process, and think about being a customer success focused company. It can be a small part of your role, but yeah, start today. And even if you're 5, 10 people, have that mentality in your company of how you're going to get there. And so it's a very, very transformational thinking for big companies or small companies in that process.
Okay, so would you say that the industry is still learning?
I, the people, I think at the big top end, yeah, I'll distinguish. It's a great question. The top end of kind of big companies who've been around for 15, 20 years, legacy mindset, they're getting that direction. You look at the big companies, they're going there. They see the need for recurring revenue. They see the need to drive customer value, but it's a big ship to turn. It takes a long time. These take 5,
Yep.
10 plus years to turn. The small companies I mentioned are debating when they put their investment towards it. The ones I think I have it right and are the ones to learn from are the SaaS companies, the pure play SaaS or software companies. They live and die on recurring revenue, and they live and die on customer success, and they put everything they can towards that model. Not everyone, I'm making generalities here, of course, but those are the ones that I learned from, and I talk to, and I look at how they do customer success. Like, wow, you do it right. I want to take those lessons to the big and to the small because they don't do it right yet.
Okay, so there is an exemplar in the market, and SaaS being, because as you're saying, live and die. If they're for whatever reason their product isn't getting the traction they want, or they've got a high churn, then they go, well, we're not. Well, what is it? What is the key metric in customer experience about time to value?
Time to value, net retention rate. Like if they're not retaining customers, they spend a lot of money to sell a customer, and then they don't retain it for the
Yep.
next renewal. They're just wasted money, right? They need that recurring revenue. That's key for them.
Okay, so the SaaS has been good for the, as you say, the pure SaaS play start of organizations, as that they've created maybe some metrics to, or benchmarks of what maybe good looks like, and then you use that as trying to replicate that, the process, the culture, the focus into the other organizations.
Yeah, all across the board. They built a culture that thrives, understands that customer success and customer experience is key. The value is key. Your current revenue, net retention rate. They built that culture around those. They built tools and process that allow that to happen, and then they built a go-to-market model, engagement model with customers that enables that to happen as well. So it kind of trickles down, and they perfect and then refine each step of the way. And so it's really those models. I look at the culture, look at the tools, look at the process, look at the model. And I try to take those lessons from the people who do it well into the ones at the very large that are transforming, or the smaller that are just starting out that journey.
Okay, you said it really fast in case the audience missed that. Well, you said about one was the go-to model, the engagement model, but also the reflect and refine. And I think that plays so much into the culture part, is that people maybe in such a hurry that they don't take the time to go, well, what was our lessons learned? Like I've been in a lot of projects, a classic one where I first got to the UK, the Solvency II implementation, which was very much a copy of a Basel II implementation, which took for years. And when I joined the organization, I said, okay, so I'm assuming you've done this before. I said, oh, yeah. I said, okay, so this looks similar to Basel II, which I knew of in hearsay, but wasn't involved in it. I said, so you've done that before? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I said, so who was on that project before? And said, oh, that girl you went to the farewell with yesterday? Yeah, that was her farewell. So the girl that had the most experience had just left the building. And I said, oh, okay, let's just read the lessons learned. I said, oh, well, there was none. I said, well, look, when the project finishes, the project doesn't finish when you deliver. The project finishes after you've captured the lessons learned and you've learned the lesson.
Correct.
And so what you're saying there is it's classic, reflect and refine.
This is the journey. And I mean, if you look at the industry, this is a relatively new field, and we're learning through this. And one of the lessons I learned from a woman who came from a pure play startup, I was struggling in my previous company around data. It's like we never had the data right. We never validated it. And I was like very frustrated. It's like this data is just right. I'm spending so much time trying to refine and build processes that get data right. And she's like, don't worry about it. Just work with the data you have, because data is never going to be perfect. If you spend your time working about data, you're losing focus on the customer and how you're engaging. So take the data you have, understand the challenges with it, but still, understand how you can bring value to what you have, and then refine, rethink, refine, revise, and get better all the time. This is a pure play startup in a big, they're a Fortune 500 company. They're one of my pinnacles of what they're doing right. I'm like, wow, and you didn't have the data right. So no, but start somewhere and then refine, get better all the time. So it's a journey.
Okay. I like how you're saying for a seasoned professional like you to say it's a journey. It's like second nature to you. And so I've seen where, and I don't want to pick on the current client, but they don't appreciate, like you've said clearly many times, there's a journey and essentially there's a process to it. And maybe it's not a direct line, but it's got feedback loops along the way so that you can stop, as your words were, reflect, refine, and revise. I'm going to quote you on these things. I'm writing because I've taken notes here. You're dropping some gold. So for the newcomers and customer experience, and as you're saying, it's a fairly, I would say, new. Your words is that understand and appreciate that there is a journey, and you might not have all the answers. And if you're the agile or the culture approach, done is better than perfect. Start with what you have, is what you're saying, and as you go and mature and gather, assess your data you've got, make assessment insights and take actions from that, and then revise. Your words, reflect, refine, and revise.
Exactly. And I'll add one more thing to that as well on the journey is take your customers along the journey as well. I mean, not our customers, but like if their end customers, because sometimes, and I remember I was doing I started a CX practice in Japan. And when we first started up in this company I was working with at the time, we started this customer experience practice. I started visiting customers and it's like, this is great. We're going to do this. We're going to bring value to you, ensure you're getting all the business value returns you want from these products and services. And they're like, I don't understand. What are you doing? What are you bringing me? And so they didn't understand either initially. And so I wanted to get my feedback from them, but they didn't understand how to use this tool that I was putting in front of them.
Yeah.
As they learned, then they fed back. It's like, this is really what I want. I don't want that data. I want this data. I want this tool. I want this engagement. And so you learn as a company and your customer learns, and that feedback loop is gold. Once they kind of get a little solid beneath them, then they feed back to you. This is the process I want. This is the engagement I want. These are the types of people I want around me. This is value to me.
Okay, so the key there, play back to the audience there, is that you have to take the customer along the journey. I think there will be two approaches. Like I'm dealing with this with the client at the moment. I said we can do it two ways. We can put the words in the mouth of the business and just get them to validate it, or we take them along the journey. And so what you're saying here is, and I think if you want sustainable growth or embed the change and take the ownership, and like, so if you're in a consulting model and you step away and they haven't embedded it, then they will never develop their own internal capability of being able to think for themselves.
Exactly. And the same goes for partners as well. If you're taking partners, they definitely need to be along the journey. They definitely need to be thinking for themselves. If they just take what you tell them and parrot it back, then once you leave the building, they're going to go back to their old ways. They need to understand it. And then as partners, customers, they can bring value back to you. So yes, it's got to be a sustainable journey. I like that word. It's got to be sustainable.
I like it. Yeah. So the audience, I think that's it's overlooked, and we'll get to what's to the end. Point number 3 later is that the appreciation of the journey. Take them along there, so that you're saying is that you're creating that internal capability so that they can do it themselves.
Well, they need to do it themselves. And as I'm engaging with small companies now, smaller, again, between 5 and 20 customers or 20 people, employees, part of my process, and I can take you the process, is you need to survive on your own. Like you engage me, I come in, I can be here as much as you want me to, but at some point my job is to enable your team to continue and to internalize this and bring this to the customers. Because at the end of the day, they own the business. I'm helping them to develop it. So that's part of it. That's got to be the way to be.
Yeah. Okay. It's so what's the word? It's empowering the business, building the capability.
I think enabling is, I mean, what I would use enabling
Yep.
You got to enable the team. And when I engage customers, new customers, again, especially the smaller clients, even bigger clients, is first it's your typical assessment, audit, whatever you want to call it. Audit sounds a bit harsh. We'll go with
Yep.
assessment. It doesn't sound as harsh.
Okay.
What are you doing today? And that can be a very short conversation. It can be nothing, right? It could be, I've got nothing. All right. Or
Yeah.
I've got customers, I've got a services deal where I'm installing something. I've got my engineer, my lead engineer who's answering calls, doing customer support. That's maybe where it starts. Or to a big company that maybe they've got 5,000 people in this team. So what are they doing today? Is really to understand that. And then the next step for me is where do you want to be in a certain time frame? And 3 years, I want to have a sales of this. I want to be 50%, 50% recurring revenue, whatever. What's that goal they want to be? And then you start educating, prioritizing. Say, here's the gold standard. Here's a pure play SaaS company. Here's the legacy hardware company. Here's some of the benchmarks and standards. And so from that kind of education process, you start to tease out what are the gaps from where they are now, where they want to be. You educate them on kind of what the industry is like. Then you get that gap analysis, right? Then that becomes your roadmap or your blueprint.
Okay.
And then you can phase it
Did you
in.
just step me through your approach then? Or
A bit of it, not all of it, but that's the start of it, is really to assess, understand, educate, to set a baseline, right? Just to say what's the industry doing, what's
Yep.
appealing to the company, and then to develop that gap analysis of, okay, where do I need to be in 6 months, a year? Again, back to this journey comment. We've discussed this so far.
Yep.
This is the journey. You can't turn a light switch and be there in 6 months. It's going to be step by step over months or a year to get to the point. That's the start of the process.
Okay. Have you ever encountered where a client may want to skip a couple of steps and go straight to, look, as I've had before, joining a project and the sponsor say, Heath, look, the business has been living the pain for the last 20 years. They don't need you to repeat back to them what they already know. They've lived this pain for 20 years. Look, just give us, like I say, there's 6 steps to this process. And number 1 is the vision, 2, control, 3, assess. Number 5 is design. He goes, Heath, I like the 6 steps approach. It makes sense. Let's just skip the first 5 or 4 steps and start at number 5, design. And I was going, you want to, like your words, you said a current state assessment and you gave a goal of what good looks like. So your probably the vision, step 1, what's that look like? But have you ever had it where the customer says, look, let's just get straight to the good stuff? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, you're a technical guy. You work in the technical industry, and then the term technical debt.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Yep.
And this is technical debt. It may be organizational debt, but it's you're creating debt that you're going to put a solution in front, which you don't know is the right one, but you're going to put it out there because it solves a need today.
Yeah.
But you don't know if it's got the right culture, the right tools, process, all of these things that we discussed.
Yep.
And likely you're going to have to redo it in next year and then do it again next year. And so that's the what I come back to is understand the need to move fast, but also you don't want to spend money on something that you got to replace in 6 months or a year. And so that's a tug and pull or balance of any transformation. And you know this more than I do. Any transformation is how do you go fast and get it right, but not incur a lot of technical debt. That's what I'm trying to balance.
The balance, a tricky one to manage that one.
What I try to do is with my customers, I try to break it down in phasing and again, it comes back to prioritization. What are your customers today? What's most important? How do you get a phase 1, a phase 2, and get you some results quickly that you and your board may want to see, but not get too far ahead of us where we're getting big processes and structure in place before really validating what we need. So that's where the phasing comes in, and being smart about that, intentional about let's get a quick win for the customer, for the board, for the company, but also do the legwork on the processes and tools and what the customer really needs.
Yep. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, if you missed that, so the quick wins almost like tactical solution right now that we can appease, prioritize, or address some risk. And it, maybe not the long term, and try and conscious there of inheriting or developing too much technical debt. Otherwise, it might nullify the whole point of the whole strategy in the first place. So you've got some form of solution options that you propose as part of the prioritization. One of them being I say in this space would say 4 options: do nothing, good, better, best. Usually the good nothing is thrown out because that is just as it is today. And I had this many times and say, oh, look, we can do the absolutely time and money is not an option. Let's just go for the best. It's like, well, no, we give them 3 options, always going to pick the middle one, right? So throw number 5. Yeah.
I like the strategy of negotiation. That's good. I like that approach.
It's about options. All right. So the first question that we covered off on the first question was about what's industry doing well. There is, I think what we're saying is there's appreciation of customer experience. There is a process to it. There is some that are mature, maybe the older mature businesses have got it. The new ones coming in, if it's a pure, as your words were, SaaS play, they've got maybe exemplars of good behavior that is so replicatable. Can copy replicate in other areas. There is a process to it. You talked about the journey. Got to take them along the journey. You're trying to attempt to, and I think this is, unless you're wanting to always continue helping a client and always be called back instead of developing, and your words were enabling, that you want to enable the client, enable the business to develop that capability. I like this because this is that's why I when clients call me, I said, do you want me to solve it? Do you want me to always stay here?
I think at the end of the day, you don't learn for yourself until you get to the operate phase. At some point, you got to operate. You go out there and talk to customer. You've got to call someone and all the preparation, all the education, assessments and learning and gap analysis and phasing, that's all theory until you take your first call to the customer. And so you got to get the operations, and then you said before, your iteration loop or your refinement loop, that comes in play from operations back to gap, back to phasing, et cetera. And so I try to get, for me, when I get involved with customers for the first time, is get quickly to an operations phase where you're actually working with customers and working with them, and you're learning yourself. You're not just taking theory from me. And so once you get there, then you feedback, and then you feedback to your what's phase 2, what's phase 3. Right.
Okay, so I like that. Yes, getting out of the, maybe in the academic you call it getting out of your head, is it getting it into on paper? Yeah, less of the theory and more practical application. Okay, so now could you walk us through, and I think we've touched on parts of it, of your approach, the assessment, the goal, the education, prioritization. How does that work in practice?
It's kind of like what I went through, and I'm going through this process now with 2 or 3 customers, and one customer is pure startup, 3 people. One of my customers is 20 people, and they're in this kind of pre-chasm phase where they're trying to get more customers, and they're all in the same mode of, I don't know if I need a CCO or the customer experience. I'm not really there yet. I don't have the revenue coming into it. And so I go through that exactly that first to me is an education. They may have known the terms. They may have heard customer support, customer success, customer experience. But what does that really mean? What's the goal? What's the business value? What that mean? So a bit of what I do is that education along with an assessment of where they are. And so those are kind of hand in hand. It's hard to assess unless your client is educated on where you're trying to get to. And so that educate, what are the standards? What's a pure play SaaS doing, and why? What's a legacy big company doing? Why? What's a pure software versus a hardware company doing? And so that's my first step: educate, assess, and that goes into the prioritization. Okay, where do we need to be in 3 years? And then where do we need to be back in 6 months time frame?
Okay,
and
so you take a long-term view or medium to long-term view, 3 years, and work backwards. Okay.
Yeah, and that phasing is important. Back to this, your client's always going to want to say, "I want it tomorrow. I want to skip all this other stuff. I want it there tomorrow."
Yep.
And so I try to give them that with a little bit of a phase 1, which is a very quick win. I can get you in 3 months with this, right? Then it'll take longer to get to maybe that phase 1, for example. Let me give you an example. Phase 1 is 1 product or 1 customer or a customer support only, or a customer engagement on 1 product. Phase two may be, okay, 3 or 4 products wide. And so, but again, my goal is to get them to an operational phase quickly for 2 reasons. One, once you get them to operations phase quickly, the customers are seeing value and they're starting to see value in the company and say, okay, this is actually working. But then they're getting feedback on where they want to pivot to. Say, you know what, we thought we are going to do X, but we really want to do Y. Now that we're getting our hands dirty, we want to do something different. So again, my goal is to get them to some subset of operational quicker. Get the CEO calling a customer, talking about this, and get the feedback. Because once he gets that, again, it's all theory. So that's where I go. And then again, operate, assess, educate together, gap analysis, prioritize, phasing, operate, and then repeat. Just repeat your phasing. And by the time you get to phase 1, phase 2, your client, or that could be you're the CEO of a small company or a board member or whatever it is, now understands a bit more about what are the challenges in the company. They can really see it for themselves, what we need to do differently in phase 2 and phase 3.
Okay, so let me play that back to you.
I covered a lot. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 steps, I think. So first is I like it. So there's a mental, so that for the audience there's the education. I think what we're saying here is like, so that we're all terms, the same terms mean the same thing to everyone. So we've got the language right. Yep. So we've got our language right. So the same term means the same thing. And I get that in these transformation projects. Like one of the first things to do is a glossary, so that we the same thing when we talk about in project world to say we're talking service delivery and the business is going, are you talking about case management? And so what's the common language here? So the first part is we got our education. So step 1 is education. You've got some good examples of what good looks like there for your benchmarking you were saying, and then assessment hand in hand. So okay, so your current state, what's the lay of the land look like today? And then the prioritization, I like it where you said the 3, so you're taking a long-term view and working backwards. So that the mental note here, so the note for the audience is that, and I've seen it with current clients and past clients, is that they are so caught up in the detail today without stepping back to go, where do we want to be? And then that creating in this space, I call it OKRs, or create all these little tactical goals and go, wait a minute, you could create 100 tactical goals, but you never got to the big one. And so, but right. So let's just, so I like how you said it. It's one of the first things you're doing, and is what's your 3-year plan working backwards. Great. And then the phasing. So you've got some form of solution options, and one of them is what can we get? Quick wins, low hanging fruit possibly that we can get now. So that and it's almost like the one product, one customer, one experience.
Right.
Okay. And then that's part of your goals, the 3 stages, if I got it right, if I'm playing it right correctly. The first one is the one product, one customer, one experience. But the second part to that is the feedback loop. So you've got actual feedback loop. And then that's when they can decide whether they want to pivot or not.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a lot. Thanks for going through it and capturing that well. But you got it right. And again, the end goal is to get something working in operations where people are engaging the customer, people are engaged internally. Again, we started out talking about, and you said it well, about their product teams and their sales teams and their support teams. You got to engage internally. So you got to get the motion going and try it. Mm-hmm. And they, you know what, we need to go, iterate this. And so that's when you go through your phasing, get phase 1, start working with internally and with the customer, and then you go back and iterate and get better.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, have you found any challenges where, and we're talking about the end-to-end customer journey, customer experience, and you've got many supporting departments. You've got sales, marketing, sales, product fulfillment, customers, onboarding, customer service support. Any challenges, or how do you approach those challenges, whether it is a big organization or small organization, of the communication and the language, and how do you, the sense of urgency, has everyone got the same sense of urgency, or we'll do it, we've got other priorities, so therefore we'll get to what we need. How do you address that?
Yeah, we started talking, earlier about the execution challenges, like the vision of customer success and customer experience. Great.
Yes.
We talked about the execution challenges, the culture challenges, the tools and process challenges. And at the end of the day, if you're a company, big or small, you're tied to the revenue. And so at the end of the day, customer experience is a foundation of the revenue chain. And that's got to be understood, internalized, and believed strongly. And if you don't have that belief, then my job when I work with customers is to make that connection to people and say, okay, well, here's what you're reporting to the street or to your board or to your CEO, whatever it is. Here's what you're reporting out. And this is how this is tied back to this motion. Okay. Because a big part of your revenue is going to be created or based on recurring revenue, renewals, repeat customers, et cetera. And that doesn't happen unless this happens. So you got to, again, tie culture back to revenue, tie tools process back to revenue, tie engagement model and the interface back to revenue. And once it's put there in the spreadsheet, then you can start to address how to make the culture work so the revenue goes up, how to make the tools process work. So that's how I go back in the day, is tied to revenue and make that connection.
Okay. I think in summary, what you're saying to the technical guys listening is there's a cause and effect relationship between the certain activities, so the metrics you're getting, or in terms of this customer experience, revenue, but also which I think there's maybe a growing appreciation about the systems thinking. There is a cause and effect and knock-on effect. And if you don't understand the relationship between certain activities upstream and oil and gas, they would call upstream, downstream, that there is a very clear line of sight of activities that happen, if it's exploration to mining, extraction, refining, production, logistics to retail. Like there is, in some industries, that's a well-known process. And in others, it may be not. But so the systems thinking people, the academics or the engineers that have an appreciation of the knock-on effect is like, this is reality. This is actually, if you cannot see it, and so to the very beginning, you said education. So the key part there is the education.
True. And once you talk to, your knock-on effect, I like how you said that, is you look at what are your indicators or your direction towards that. And to me, revenue is, again, it's the ultimate metric for a company. You're making money, you're losing money. But revenue is a lagging indicator. When you report revenue, you're that's reporting what happened 6 months ago or a year ago, right?
Yeah.
And so you said before about OKRs and metrics, and how do you find metrics and indicators in your business that are leading indicators?
Yes. Yeah.
And culture, tools, process, these are leading indicators of what it's going to be. And so that's the other distinction I make, is that it's all tied to revenue, but when you talk revenue, it's happened already. Okay.
Yeah.
What are the measurements and indicators out of what's going to happen in the future? And that is, things like net retention rate and renewal rate and others, look at those. Those are kind of leading to what revenue is going to be in 6 months. And that's part of the education process I get to with customers as well. And that's, again, it ties back to those challenges we said: cultural, tools, process, engagement model. Okay.
I like what you're saying there with the indicators. I think when you're saying lagging and leading, is that there is, and so the lagging is almost hard, tangible. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can see it, outcomes of some prior activity, because it's a result of. And the other leading one is more maybe the soft one, the culture, the processes in place, the things that might not be the way we do things around here, that may not be able to see it happen, or it's not clear. Maybe it's got written on this, our values. We also had that situation where they say we are a customer service facing organization, and then the reality is it's nothing to do with it. So although they might have it written on a board, the actual, your words coming right back to the beginning about execution. The execution, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, so leading indicators, they're fuzzy. You said it right. They're harder to see, but when you're looking at a lagging indicator, it's happened, it's done. You're not going to impact revenue today because it's done. but you can impact revenue tomorrow. That's how you lead that way. And that's when you make sure you're talking to the right level in the company, your client, that they can see that vision. They can drive things differently for tomorrow than they were yesterday or today. So that's the engagement model. And that's how and back to words you said, that's how you enable the team to sustain on their own after you leave, is you get them to understand those indicators, to internalize the culture and tools process.
All right, I like how you said there that like the levels. Like I call that, and it's almost maybe saying your engagement model. I say about the 3 L's: layers, language, and levels. And in organization, you got the layers: executive, the operations, and then implementation and project world. And they all speak a different language and a different level of detail. Like the guys upstairs, the market share and how they're sitting with the competitors. And then operations is what's our churn or our time to value. And down in implementation, that level of detail down there is in code, very, very minute detail. And you got to understand what level you're speaking to, what layer and what level of detail. So should we call that the Jason McLaurin engagement model there?
We call it the Jason Heath model. Yeah, we can call it.
There's a JB actually. I wanted to call in your services, and we launched a Home Pro. I'm taking notes really for my guys, so we can say, hey, look, this is the guy we're going to be calling. You right? Okay, so I think so good for that. Now, I've generally got the show notes are going to be everything we're discussing is in the show notes. But for number 3, the third point is, if you could do it all again, which is really the takeaway. If you could do it all again, and the things you were like, oh, I definitely wouldn't do that. I learned my lesson. I got burned on that one. I won't do that one again. The quick way, what would you do again, and what would you do differently?
It's always the ideal, right? If I could just start over and do it again.
Yeah.
One for me, and I mentioned this early on, if I could work closer to a pure play SaaS company, for me, my own journey, I've learned a lot from them, working with them, not for them. I haven't worked for pure play, but I've worked with people from pure play SaaS. I worked with them. I had them sell to me. So I've learned from how they engage with me. I've learned a lot of that process. And so for the audience, find a way to learn from them. Learn from the ones who do it best. Either engage them, work with them, have them sell to you, and see how they engage you as a customer. Right? That for me was very powerful when I engaged a pure play SaaS company as they were my vendor and they were delivering services to me as a customer experience. Like, wow, they're doing it better than I'm doing it. So that's number one for me is get that experience any way you can from people who do it better than you are, and don't be afraid. Surround yourself with people smarter than you are. That's part of our role is to surround yourself with people that can do it better or smarter than you are. The second thing for me, I said it early on, is don't wait for perfect data. Data is never perfect. And if you index on the problem rather than the opportunity, you're going to get caught up in trying to refine the process and the tools and all the stuff internally and not talk to your customer. So get the data you have, maybe 30% right. That's all right. Just go with it, right? Go and take the decisions you can with what you have. No one is limited. No one is challenged. And then try to get it 35% right and 40% right. And always get better, but don't wait for perfect data because you're going to miss your window. That's my second kind of thought around this.
Okay, so you're saying there, if I summarize that and paraphrase, it, done is better than perfect. Use what you've got. You'll learn as you go.
Yeah, or don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. That's another way to say it. And again, especially in big companies, getting accurate data, even small companies, is a challenge. And you can get over focused on that. And then the third thing I'll say, as I said this before, is get the culture right from the start. And this is something you back to what you said earlier, is I don't want to worry about culture and this tool. I just want to get to this step 5. I want to get there. No, go back, get the culture right. At least get it better than they get, and always keep that focus on it at the very senior levels. Or else you're going to always be coming back year after year to fix culture problems. So fix it right from the start. At least get it better from the start.
Okay, otherwise
I things are differently.
Okay, so let me play those 3 back to you. So I think if your lessons is that you're learning, and I think what you're saying is that if you find good examples, learn from them, particularly when you're gauging other vendors, partners, customers, potential, and you're on the other side, learn from that example and surround yourself. So this is the takeaway. And some people might be threatened by that, is to surround yourself by people, groups that are smarter than you. Then they're done was better than perfect with your data. Take what you've got and you'll learn and develop. Don't wait that perfect. Don't let perfect get in the way of good enough. There's your quote. Yep. I'm going to quote you on that one. And the last one about culture is that you got to get that right first. Otherwise, you're the hamster wheel. You'll be forever going around in a circle.
Those are
Did I get that right?
You captured it right. You're doing a good job capturing and reflecting to the audience. So thank you for that. Yes, those are the takeaways.
Okay, and so the ultimate of your reflection was earlier, where you said reflect, refine, and revise, the 3 R's. Got a few little takeaways there. So thank you. Excuse me. So Jason, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much. So the audience, we want to get hold of you. How can they get hold of you? I'll put your LinkedIn contact on the show notes and get hold of you there, or an email address or website.
Yeah, ceridiangroup.com, Ceridian, Seridian group.com, or LinkedIn, Jason McLaurin, I'm there. And I'd love to hear you, love to engage, love to talk, and love to learn and share my thoughts as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you for your time. All the way from Colorado there, where hopefully I'll get there, maybe not this season, next season. All right. Thank you very much, Jason.
Come skiing and you got a place to stay, all right?
Oh, legend. Oh, legend. I might take you up on that. But I might actually hit you up. I'm gonna for some consultancy on when I launch when we get Hobie Pro finally off the ground. It's a long year process getting that so far, but we're almost there. We're almost there. But Jason,
all the best.
Thank you very much from Colorado. Have a good evening and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.